The capital cities or main hubs in World of Warcraft are places where we've all spent a lot of time, whether that's in between raiding or dungeons, waiting to PvP, or just figuring out what you'll be doing next. Over the years, each of these capitals has had a different feel to them as well, from their aesthetics, how user-friendly they are to get around and find what you need, and of course your preference as well. And I wanted to rate them from what I feel are the worst to the best capitals in the game. There are around 20 total over all the expansions, if we're including reworks that is, and some of them have been used more than once as well. But for this I want to just cover each hub once in what is, in my opinion, its best version, instead of talking about them more than once if they've been used on several occasions. So with that said, I'm going to rank all the main hubs in World of Warcraft, starting with the worst and ending off with the best. And if we're starting with the worst, well, say it with me everyone, it is obviously Oribos. You do wonder at times just how did so many things simultaneously go wrong with Shadowlands that even the main hub for the expansion is also among the worst, or in my opinion, the worst one Blizzard has ever made. A confusing series of circular rooms which all look pretty much identical from the center, leaving you with questions such as, which floor is the Flight Master on? What floor am I supposed to be on for this quest? Why isn't the Maw teleporter working on this floor? And biggest of all, why am I still playing this game? And if like me, maybe you didn't play a ton of Shadowlands, each time you come back here and forget which was your character you progress the story on to some extent, you have to try and rework out how to navigate this area and progress the story enough to access the other zones in Shadowlands, unless they've changed that by now. Surely this is changed by now, right? Oh, and that's before we get to the downstairs bit, or the outer ring of Oribos too, which adds more layers of confusion, NPCs and random quest stuff which is just hidden all over the place. It's grey, it's confusing to navigate, and you need quest progress to make this place functional. And out of every single main hub in World of Warcraft, if there was any I actively dislike, it's this one. This is by far the worst capital in the game that's ever been produced, and it is not close. Before we go on, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev aims to give you the tools to get fully on board with a bunch of programming languages, including Python, Go, SQL, and more, so that you can forge a career in back-end web development. It keeps things more interactive than regular online learning courses too, by treating this process as though it's a proper RPG with experience, leaderboards, achievements, and more. It's just something extra to keep things a bit more interesting and you motivated to progress. Speaking of progression, Boot.dev believes in hands-on learning, and one of the key things they want to get you doing is writing tons of your own code, so you can really get a good understanding of each point before you move on. And if you do get stuck, there is plenty of help available too, such as Boots the Bear. He's going to help via asking you more questions about what you're doing to help you understand, instead of just outright giving you the answers. Myself, having spent many hours googling stuff when trying to learn things for editing or making videos, having this kind of resource to hand would have been so useful. Boot also wants to set you up for success, as programming isn't something you'll be picking up overnight, but a learning process of applicable skills that will serve you long term. And if it does end up being for you, there's often working from home positions for this type of role as well. So if it sounds interesting, why not give them a go? You can go to boot.dev and try out their courses for free, and then use my code Willie to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Thank you once again to Boot.dev for the sponsor. Let's get on back to WoW. The next worst is in Warlords of Draenor. Now, WoD wasn't as bad as Oribos. It was just disappointing, and that is very in theme for Warlords of Draenor, to be fair. You know, the intended main hub at one point in time for the Horde was supposed to be a massive outpost in Frostfire Ridge, and for the Alliance, the Temple of Karabor in Shadowmoon Valley, which is of course what it was called pre-Black Temple. Suffice to say, either of these options would have been a massive improvement over Ashran, which was just kind of forgettable. It never had the size or feeling of being a central hub or a capital. It was just a somewhat convenient collection of NPCs on a small island, which was detached from everything else the expansion had to offer. And to be honest, the two faction hubs on Ashran, which were Warspear for Horde and Stormshield for Alliance, are basically just waiting rooms for the Ashran PvP zone, which was to be the main focus of the island itself. Ashran just never felt as though it was a place for players who were meant to spend a lot of time time. You very much get the feeling that Blizzard were out of time on producing the expansion, and they just had to use something which had been finished, so they picked this. Unless of course in Warlords of Draenor you were to consider your garrison to be your hub, of course, which I'm not entirely sure there are more redeeming things to say about it because you're there solo all the time. Doesn't feel like much of a mainstay either. Overall though, Ashran is just kind of boring, forgettable, and feels like a placeholder. Definitely one of the worst main hubs in WoW. Next is going to be what I suspect will be unpopular pick number 1 from me here, and that's the Undercity. I don't like the Undercity at all. I don't like the music, don't like the atmosphere, and I don't like the layout of it. Now, I know the theme that it's going for is fitting. It's supposed to be a destroyed city now occupied by the undead. I mean, thematically, it's doing what it's supposed to do, but when I'm leveling something on the Horde and I end up there, I want it to be a short stay because it's just not very appealing to me. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm looking for something in the Undercity, I end up going the wrong way. As in, do you need to go to those underground bits where the apothecaries are for a quest? Do you need to go to where Sylvanas is? And biggest of all, which set of stairs is closest to the Flight Master in the center? Never mind, I'll do what I always do and just run around the whole ring till I see the guy with a bat next to him. I know it's a classic capital and a lot of people love their undead and fair play, but for me, it's just not a place I enjoy being. Next up, I'm bundling the 2 new faction capitals from TBC together, both Silvermoon City and the Exodar. I'm sorry, but what was the point of these? The most use either one saw is during random events in future expansions. Even during actual TBC playing the new races, you barely spent any time in your faction's capitals. And if you wanted to go back to either of them, you really had to go out of your way as well, either through the Undercity teleporter or getting a boat from Astronar. For what it's worth, again, thematically, both cities are great for their particular race. Silvermoon is a majestic city of the elves, and Exodar is basically a spaceship that smashed into the floor, and the Draenei just said, that sounds good enough, we'll build our city here. But as they have always been, there is just really no reason to be in either Silvermoon or the Exodar. They must be among the most underappreciated pieces of work put into this game, and unfortunately, because of that, I really just can't rate them that highly. Following that, I have the current hub for the War Within, Dornogal. I don't know what it is about Dornogal, but it just feels kind of forgettable and a bit bland, which is weird to say when it's the current expansion capital. I don't think the Earthen Dwarves are particularly the most interesting of races out there either, and their city being a lot of big grey blocks, whilst again fitting, isn't very exciting to be part of. It feels almost like Ashran in a way, where it's a bunch of conveniently placed NPCs in a random open world environment, and it all looks quite samey when you're flying above it at light speed on your dragon, and it's pretty easy to get confused as to where you need to go. For me, I always get lost trying to find that teleporter for Ashkahet, for example. Overall, I'm just not a huge fan of Dornogal, especially when you see how amazing some other zones look in the same expansion. Following that, we have the main hubs from Mists of Pandaria, which are Shrine of the Two Moons for Horde and Shrine of the Seven Stars for Alliance. I'm just going to put them together here because they're basically the same thing in terms of how they're laid out. You've got an outside area with vendors, and then an inside area with the 2 paths leading up into rooms with teleporters, and the other one more vendors, tier set sellers and all that. The big downside here is that you still require engineering to use the auction house here, same as how Dalaran was in Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, as far as I know, you're still always taking engineering anyway because it's just the most overpowered profession ever, but having that level of convenience tied to a profession really doesn't feel that great. The shrines are just okay, and I've never had the feeling of them being much of a central hub, to be honest. They're very small areas, and there's not a ton to see here. It feels more like a pit stop before you're wanting to head out back into the open world again, which is fine, but equally doesn't make them too memorable either. Don't really have strong feelings towards either of the shrines, they're just very average for me. Next, we're heading into Battle for Azeroth for the Horde capital there, Dazara Lore. This is home of the Zandalari Trolls, and I don't think there has ever been a more expansive capital city than this one. You could have spent the entire expansion playing Horde regularly and still be finding out new things here, such as secrets, vendors, NPC interactions, and so on. In that regard, it was really cool. However, Dazara Lore was too big. I mean, I can get lost working out where the Flight Master is in Undercity. Do you think I can actually find anything in this place without having Google open? Nah, this place was just way too hard to find what you needed to find half of the time, and because of that, it became kind of irritating for me. Dazara Lore looks amazing, there's always something new to find here, but oftentimes it was just a bit too user-unfriendly as a central hub. Next is, for me, the best modern World of Warcraft hub we've seen through recent expansions, and that is Valdrakken. Everything you need to find is relatively close together towards the center of it, such as your professions, auction house, teleporters and so on. It could be a bit confusing with quests because Dragonflight just had a habit of filling your quest log up with random stuff, and sometimes you had to go talk with the dragons way up on top of the tower, but there was a teleporter up there so it wasn't too bad. Valdrakken felt like a city somehow more than a lot of others on this list did. It was always busy at the center of it and it made the game feel alive, which is very good and important for an MMO. You could also take off from the main tower to pretty much wherever you needed to go in the expansion with the new dragon riding feature. Valdrakken was visually impressive and it fit in well with the Dragonflight expansion, so I thought it was overall a solid capital. Next is Orgrimmar, and specifically the pre-Cataclysm version. The main reason for pre-Cataclysm is actually the music. I swear those horns that go off at the start of the post-Cataclysm Orgrimmar soundtrack are just way too annoying, and they make me want to mute the music in the game. When a piece of music starts with blaring noise, it's just not very appealing for me. Old Orgrimmar is definitely solid though, but not my favourite classic Horde hub. It also has that feeling of being a city from the main gates where you walk into it, and then you have the popular areas outside the auction house, you have the people flexing their mounts and gear on top of the bank and so on. The downside is it's very brown. I mean, it's fitting, but not exactly the most interesting to behold either. The layout can also be a bit annoying at times with having to go as far as humanly possible to get from the auction house to the anvils for certain professions, and some profession trainers are a bit hidden too, with Orgrimmar having several levels to it. You know, back in the day, the main reason that I chose to play Alliance in this game was because I preferred the Alliance capitals over the Horde ones. It wasn't really for anything specifically tied to races or classes. I figured you spend so much time in these capital cities that, well, I wanted to be in one where I actually enjoyed being all of the time. And you spend by far the most time in Orgrimmar as Horde, so as much as I think it's a solid hub, it's not the best one out there for me. Now we're moving on to TBC with Shattrath. I have a feeling that putting Shattrath over Orgrimmar may be a bit controversial, I guess we'll see on that, but I know I rather like the capital of World of Warcraft's first expansion. It has a great location in relation to the rest of the Burning Crusade. You could really fly out anywhere and be where you needed to be pretty fast. There was always so many people there, so it had that feeling of being a city because there were travel hubs, reputation, and even some quests took place here as well. There were Aldor and Scryers for choices on different characters as well, though there wasn't too much difference between them in reality, though it was an interesting idea at the time. Overall, Shattrath fit TBC really well as a broken world where different factions are coming together out of necessity to fight something bigger than their disputes, and as such it made sense as the first neutral city. You had Lower City with random vendors, the Ethereal, the Arakoa, and the Upper City with Blood Elves and Draenei training for war, and then of course Adal at the centre. It just felt as though it really all came together. Also, who can forget the short city tour with Khadgar's Elemental? There were definitely some downsides, such as no class trainers to respec, and I remember oftentimes profession trainers were just over in Outlands somewhere and you had to go find them instead of being in Shattrath, but other than that it was a good place to be. Next is the final Horde capital on the list, and that is Thunderbluff. Where Undercity is dark and grim, and Orgrimmar is brown and also grim, Thunderbluff has a totally different feel to it. The more spiritual and nature-attuned Tauren give a side to the Horde that they very much needed. It has a nice central area around the auction house with a nearby bank, the mailbox, the anvils, and even a little fishing pool at the centre. It's all very convenient. It could be a bit confusing to know where to go in Thunderbluff with all the different rope bridges, and you always have the danger of accidentally walking off, but those were the only real downsides. It was a cool idea for a city to be up in the air like this as well, and it just feels completely different from anything else that we saw at the time. You know, for a period of time in Season of Discovery, Thunderbluff was the Horde hub for Classic instead of Orgrimmar, because you could still get world buffs there, and it was just better situated for getting to the BFD raid. And man, would have it felt better playing Horde if I could have justified spending more time here overall. Ultimately, it's a more used capital than the likes of Silvermoon or Exodar, so it gets points for that, but it still goes probably a bit underused for how good it is. Next is really the counterpart of Thunderbluff faction-wise, Darnassus, as in the not on fire Darnassus, that is. Again, I want to make the same comment about Season of Discovery here. Phase 1, this was the place to be. For the first time ever, Darnassus was the Alliance capital, and it was just glorious. I wish it was like this all of the time because I would want to set my Hearthstone here. There was definitely a nostalgia nostalgia thing for me as well to some extent. My first character was a night elf, so when I walked into Darnassus it just blew me away, and all these years later I still love being here just as much. Yes, there are absolutely some annoyances that hold it back. The auction house is a mile from a mailbox, there is no anvil here at all. They did add one in Season of Discovery though, but thematically you won't need an anvil because Teldrassil doesn't even have mining nodes at all. It's a giant tree. You don't get mining as a night elf till you talk to some dwarves at Darkshore. Despite this, it still remains one of my absolute favourites, and I just really wish there were more reasons to be here because Darnassus is literally in the middle of nowhere. It's decent for late game in terms of getting to Moonglade or Felwood, Winterspring and so on, but for anything else south of that, you're often just better taking a boat from somewhere on the Eastern Kingdoms, unless you fancy a nice 15 to 20 minute flight path. Next is the Alliance capital from BFA, Boralus. Simply put, this is a brilliant version of a naval city. There are ships passing by, tons of traders, and it's a place that just feels alive. Boralus is actually pretty massive as well, but unlike Dazaralor, Blizzard didn't decide to hide half of the stuff you want to find throughout the city, and instead just put all the useful stuff pretty close together, such as teleports, professions, and so on. The whole lower city part of Boralus is super expansive, and has things such as the Black Market Auction House, Pet Battle Dungeon teleporters and more, but it's all extras that you don't need to find on a daily basis. The music here is also great, and it gives good connections to the rest of the zones for Alliance. BFA had a lot of criticism in retrospect, but for me Boralus was great and deserves a high place on this list. Following that we have Dalaran, and out of the 2 times we've had this place as a main hub, the clear winner for me is the Legion version. There's more going on throughout the city, you don't need engineering for the auction house, and many class order halls were linked to Dalaran. Legion Dalaran took this floating city and put it dead center of the expansion. It was super convenient to fly out to anywhere you needed to be, easy access via teleports to the rest of Azeroth if you wanted to go to another expansion for whatever reason, and so many small details such as NPC pathing around the city, random events, secrets to be found, and so on. There was a PvP zone in the sewer which was, it was a complete mess, but it was a fun kind of mess, and you could always turn it off if you wanted to. Class order halls could be accessed from Dalaran too, well, for a number of classes they could anyway, and these were one of the best thematic features for our classes we have ever seen. They really captured the essence of what it feels like to be your particular class. Dalaran was also pretty compact in size, but still always felt alive because of this. Legion was just a good time to be playing World of Warcraft, and its version of Dalaran was a great capital. At number 2 is Ironforge. Carved into the side of the mountain, the home of the dwarves is everything you expect it to be and more. Giant majestic halls, epic soundtrack, and a huge forge is a central feature to the whole city. The scope of this city is huge as well, but there were always enough people in it to make it feel active, and especially when you first get there without a mount, it can take some time to traverse around. Ironforge and Stormwind also had the deep run tram too as an extra feature, and it is in a great location in the world which was easy to travel to a number of places from. Ironforge did the whole mountain home feeling super well, and without a doubt is one of the best faction capitals in the game, which leaves only one left, and that is of course Stormwind. Old Stormwind that is, the pre-Cataclysm one. This place is simply a masterpiece. You don't forget the first time you walk into Stormwind through the main gates with the massive statues at the side and the music blasting. Amazing soundtrack here as well, by the way. Inside the city, it just really feels more varied than other main hubs do. There's the trade district with the auction house and mailbox close together, and this place is always busy. There's the mage quarter that links up with the park area of the zone. There's the dwarven district with the smoke rising, you have machines moving about and the focus on professions. There's Stormwind Keep beyond that, and of course Old Town, and it just keeps on going. Stormwind has a ton of random events too. You have school classes moving throughout the streets, NPC interactions in bars, war vets telling their old stories, and so on. And you have small city noises in the background too. This is particularly noticeable in the dwarven district, and these really come into play as the music quietens down eventually. Stormwind links with so many quests in the game too, right from the Defias at the start all the way to uncovering Onyxia's plot at the end. Speaking of Onyxia, world buffs also drop here, so even if you're just AFKing, there's a chance you get a buff and then can continue on questing with that. Stormwind just captures the feeling of a city the best out of any capital WoW has seen. It's very varied, there's no flying, it's grounded fantasy, large scale, it feels alive, and players have so many reasons to be there. there, and that's why for me Old Storming gets the top spot as the best capital in WoW's history. But that is just in my opinion though. Of course this game has two factions, and for half of you you're gonna have spent a lot more time in the opposite faction capitals, and I imagine you'll feel a bit differently, so let me know what you think, which for you are the best and worst. Drop a comment down below. Thanks again to boot.dev for supporting the channel. Their courses are free to view, so if you're interested, why not check them out via the links below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.